Alright, so now that you've gotten your feet wet a little bit with particles, I'd like for you to work along with me with this project. You should by now have the instruction sheet open. Looks like this right here. It says Sparks and Falling Leaves on it. And so we're going to work through that together. And I'm not going to lie to you, this is not a very original composition. Actually, I stole it from Video Copilot. And I've given you a link to the actual project. We're going to do a kind of simplified version of this project. So there's what we're going to be creating right there. A little splash of sparks and a little bit of motion blur in there, and several different kinds of sparks actually. So let's jump in and see how this goes. By the way, in order to get this full screen like this, I'm just pressing the tilde key on the keyboard. That's on the upper left. So I'm going to press it again to get back out of it again. And there we go. There's our little animation right there. So let's just click on the project window here. I'm going to start a new comp, and we'll call it Particles 2, I guess. Do we have a Particles already? No, we don't have Particles yet, so let's leave it at Particles. 5 seconds long, and we'll click OK. Now we'll create a new solid, layer new solid. This is going to be a black solid, and it'll be our background, BG. Click OK. And another solid called floor, and we'll make it a dark red. There we go. Now we got a background and a floor. So the next thing I want you to do is to go up and get your ellipse tool from the list of shapes. And what we want to do here, I'll roll back the mouse just a little bit, and I want to create a nice big oval like this over the bottom third half of the screen, something like that. Then we'll click F for feather. You know this is a mask already, right? And so we're going to give it a lot of feather. The idea here is just to really make it look like it's a floor that's lit. And if we need to, we can lower the opacity a little bit. Not sure this one needs it. Yeah, maybe. Not a bad thing. Okay, let's add some text. And just kind of halfway get it centered up on the screen here. And we're going to do something a little bit different now. We're going to, for the first time I think, use 32-bit mode. And so to do 32-bit, you actually need to option click on this little thing down here that normally would say 8 bits per channel. So hold Alt or Option and click on it until it says 32. If you're working from this project, we're already in 32 bits per channel. Okay, now we're going to go over here to the color menu, the color chip, and what we're doing in 32 bits per channel, it's best if Andrew Kramer explains it to you in his tutorial, but essentially with our regular 8-bit color, we have 8 bits assigned to each piece of the color spectrum. So 8 bits for red, 8 bits for green, 8 bits for blue. If you do the math, that comes out to 16 million colors, 16.4 million or something like that. Well, when we go to 32-bit mode, that means we're going to have 32 bits assigned to each of red, green, and blue. So that gives us a tremendous variety of colors. Billions, in fact, not just 16.4 million, but billions of colors. Okay, so we're going to change the colors here as it says in the instructions. Red we're going to set to 5. This should normally only go to 1, by the way. Green will go to 2, and blue will be 1. And we get something that looks like it's white, but it's really not white. In fact, if you look closely at the edges, you're going to see some little redness or golden kind of an outline around this type. So it's really not white, and we'll find that out soon enough. Okay, so let's go ahead and set a text preset onto this type, and to do so, we can do one of two things. First, we need to go to the Effects and Presets menu, and we'll clear out what's in there, and we could either go to the flyout on the right and choose Browse Presets, which is our normal method, which is going to call up Adobe Bridge, and we can choose our preset from there. It's the one called Bullet Train. Now we could also simply type it in here, Bullet Train. Bullet Train, there we go, Bullet Train. And if we drag that onto the text, we'll see that there's an effect on here, kind of just like so. And now you can see, as it comes in, now you can see that sort of orangish color. It really is kind of an orange, but it's so orange, it's such a bright orange that it looks white. Okay, let's keep going. We're going to create now a new 20mm camera. So we're going to layer, new camera. And we're going to make it 20mm. That's the preset. No depth of field necessary in this one, so leave that turned off. And we will make this a 2-node camera. And we'll click OK. Now we get this warning that says, hey, wait a minute, there's nothing 3D on your timeline. So we're going to make it 3D right now. We're going to click the 3D switch for the text. Okay. Now we're also going to add motion blur to this. I think we've used motion blur a couple more times, but just to remind you about this, we have to click the master switch for motion blur and the layer switch for motion blur. And what that's going to do is just add even more blur to this as it comes in. So nice, lot of blur there. Okay, back to the camera layer now. We're going to type P for position. And we're going to go to 15 frames, 1.5, and we're going to set a keyframe for position. Bang, that's it. Now let's go back to the beginning of the timeline. Actually, the directions say frame number 1, and we'll set another keyframe here. And what we're going to do with this is reset the position of this to 0, 360, and 500. And let's see what happens now. The camera's created a little movement. And if you want to see what this looks like, we can go to our custom view 1, and let's go ahead and turn the black background on, and we'll see what's going on with the camera. The camera is coming around from the back side of the text, even though we can't see the text yet. And then as the text is transitioning on with its bullet train effect, we're swinging the camera around to the center, so whoosh, like so. And let's look at 2 views just so that we can see how this actually looks. We'll set this one to our normal view, and we'll set this one to our custom view, and turn on the black background so we can kind of see it there, and kind of see what that looks like. We'll fly that back a little bit. Pretty nice, huh? Okay, let's keep going to what you came for, and that is to work on particles. We're going to go back to active camera here in a single view, and that gets us back to where we were, and we're going to add a new solid. Going to make it orange, and we'll call it sparks. Okay. We'll add the CC particle world effect. There it is. And there's our sparks layer. And you can see already that the sparks are in 3 dimensions. It's honoring the camera. So that's pretty cool right off the bat. So let's make some changes to our sparks layer. We are going to first go in and turn off the grid. So we twirl down grid and uncheck the box for grid. And we'll twirl that back up because we don't need to see that one anymore. At 0 in the timeline, we're going to set a keyframe for birth rate. And we're going to set it to 0. We're going to move to 1 frame in the timeline, frame number 1, and we're going to ramp the birth rate up to 3. Boom. And at 9 frames in the timeline, we will take that birth rate back down to 1.5. And finally, at frame number 10, we'll set it to 0. So we got 4 keyframes for birth rate. What's happening here is that we have no particles being created at the beginning. And then starting at 1 frame, then we're going to create a whole bunch of particles. And then at the 15 frame mark, the particles stop being created. So no new particles are being created, but we still have to let the existing particles die. And that's what it's going to happen there. So it's a splash, and then that's it. Let's go ahead and change the particle type to lens convex. And we need to turn on motion blur for this layer. So go ahead and turn on motion blur there. We'll set the birth size to 0.05, very small particles. And the death size to 0.120, or 0.12. All right, so we're going to twirl down producer now. And we are going to set a keyframe for the X position to negative 0.5. So the position X, negative 0.5. Okay, so we're going to go to 10 frames in the timeline. And we're going to set the X position to 0.5. From negative 0.5 to 0.5. Now let's go to physics. So we'll twirl down physics here, and we're going to set the velocity, that's the speed at which the particles move, or the strength at which they move. We're going to set velocity to 1.6. And we'll set inherent velocity to 45. You'll remember that inherent velocity is going to kind of take on the motion of the emitter and have the particles move along with it. So inherent velocity, 45. Okay, it's going to kind of spit the sparks in the direction that the emitter is traveling, which is left to right. All right, gravity, we'll set that to 0.4, a little bit different than it is now, so slightly less gravity. And then we'll add to this, let's look what we got before we get too much further. We got a little splash of particles there. It just kind of creates those particles and then just lets them die out. And we're going to add an effect here, the glow effect. G-L-O-W, glow. Put that on the sparks layer. Now we're going to create another sparks layer. So all we're going to do is duplicate the one we already have. Command D or Control D. And on this one, we're going to turn off motion blur. Let's go ahead and call this sparks small. Sparks small. We'll make a few changes here. We'll set the inherent velocity to 30. So we'll twirl down physics, inherent velocity to 30. And we'll set gravity to 1.2. So this is more gravity than we have right now. It's set at 0.4 right now. We're going to head it up to 1.2. So it's really going to pull on those particles. And we'll set the birth and death size to 0.02. So we'll go to the particle here, 0.02 and 0.02. And let's render it out, see how it looks. There it is. So pretty easy, right? Now I do want you to notice a couple of things about this. We've got some small particles in here, and we've got some larger particles. We've got motion blur going on. We've got no motion blur going on. And in a normal animation, you may have 3, 4, 5 layers of particles in there. It just depends on what you're after. Okay? So try that one out, and what I really would like to see you do is experiment with this and do something different with it. Now, I also have a couple of others in here that you are welcome to try on your own. I'm not going to go over them today, but we have a looping particle animation for fall, little fall leaves falling. Leaves are falling. Is that why they call it fall? I guess it is. Anyway, we've got a little looping animation here for fall leaves, and those instructions are also in the document that I have for you. In addition, I have included for you some recipes for fire, smoke, and cinders. And we can look at the cinders here and see it's not too impressive all by itself, but there's our cinders layer. We've got some smoke here that's being created. And finally, the fire layer that's got all of these included in it. And there's a few other little extras that I didn't even document in here. Maybe you can find them. But you are welcome to go in there and try your hand at fire. It's actually a lot of fun. It's a fun little project to see if you can create some realistic fire. So go in and have some fun with this and try your best to really get your head around these particles. It's a lot of fun, and this is one of the most important things that you can learn in After Effects. Good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.